These are some notes on Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which was written, notice this at the top of the page up here, the little C in a period, 1375. I think I asked this at the beginning of the semester, and one of you got this question right. What does the little C mean right here? When you see a date, particularly an old date, something a long time ago, sometimes you'll see a little C. Well, that stands for circa, C-I-R-C-A, the Latin word circa, which means about 1375 this was written. Now, why don't we have an author? We have an author for almost everything else we study in this course. Why don't we have an author for Sir Gawain and the Green Knight? It's a great story. It's very entertaining. It's one of the best stories that we study as far as being interesting. I think it's a far more interesting story than Beowulf, really, because you have a balance of both male and female characters who are well developed. Well, for whatever reason, whoever wrote this, his or her name never got permanently attached to the story. So note number 1 tells us here that the authorship of Sir Gawain is truly unknown. Some scholars call this person the Pearl Poet. You see, we're pointing to on the notes. And again, you have these notes in your packet. A lot of people refer to the author as the Pearl Poet because whoever this is, I'm going to say he, ladies, if you'll excuse me for using the masculine pronoun there. Probably it was a he. Whoever he was, he also wrote a famous poem called The Pearl. So some call him the Pearl Poet, and some people suggest that he was a poet from England in the Middle Ages named John Massey, but we don't know that for certain. That's just a speculation. So really and truly, we don't know who the author is. But note number 2 tells us that Sir Gawain was written about the same time as the Canterbury Tales, but in a very different dialect. A dialect does not mean a different language. A dialect means a different part of the same country. For example, I've lived most of my life in Alabama now. I was born in the state of Georgia, but I've lived most of my life in Alabama, in northern Alabama. And my cousins, my first cousins who live in Atlanta, Georgia, and have lived there all their lives, even though I and they speak English, we all speak English, my English sounds a little bit different from theirs. Somebody who has lived all their lives in a city, particularly if you have any kinfolk from up north, if you have any kinfolk from Michigan or Pennsylvania or New York, their English sounds a lot different from yours. They have a very different dialect. Same language, same words, same spelling, but the sound of it is different. The usage is a little different. So Sir Gawain was probably not written by Geoffrey Chaucer because it's in a different dialect than Chaucer, who was a guy who lived in the city, who was educated and lived in London. All right. Who is the main character? Sir Gawain is one of the Knights of the Round Table. The legendary King Arthur that we're pointing to there on the notes had, according to legend, 100 very brave knights who helped him in governing the land of England or the land of Britain. And Sir Gawain was one of his Knights of the Round Table. There was Sir Robin, Sir Galahad, Sir Lancelot, on and on and on, and 96 other ones. But Sir Gawain is usually said to be King Arthur's nephew or some kind of relative of King Arthur. And his name is pretty well known. All right, well, now let's answer the question, who is King Arthur? That's somebody that almost all Americans have heard of, but we tend to be a little foggy on who is that exactly. I'm going to skip note number 4 for a moment and look at note number 5. King Arthur was the first of the great Christian kings of England. He unified British culture, brought tribal bands together to form a more unified government, and his court, his royal court, was called Camelot. You see the word that we're pointing to right there, Camelot. The court at Camelot was the headquarters for King Arthur, Queen Guinevere, and the Knights of the Round Table. Now, King Arthur, if in fact he was a real person, and some people even debate that, whether he was a real person, But if he was a real person, he probably lived between about 400 and 800 AD. So he showed up potentially kind of at just before the Middle Ages started, right at the end of the Dark Ages. All right, we've already talked about number 6. Number 7 says, the Sir Gawain poet says that the founder of Britain, that's another word for England, was a descendant of Prince Aeneas and the Trojans. So there's a connection between the mighty Roman Empire, the Trojans, the Roman Empire, and later the people of England. That shows up on the first page of your reading. And apparently it was important to the poet to establish that the people of England were in a long line of royal and brave and military-like people. More important than note number 7, though, let's back up to note number 4. I think that's a more important note for our study here. Sir Gawain as a story incorporates many literary genres: chivalric romance, courtly love, Arthurian legend, adventure, didacticism. What in the world is didacticism? Didacticism is literature that teaches a moral lesson. It's preachy. It tries to tell you how to live your life. It tells you what you should think and what you should believe and how you should act. That's what didactic means, teaching a moral lesson. Symbolism shows up quite a bit. And look at this one. This is not the first time we've seen the journey theme, is it? We have encountered the journey theme before with Homer in the Odyssey, where King Odysseus is on the long journey from the Trojan War back home to Ithaca. In the Canterbury Tales, those pilgrims are on a long journey to visit the tomb of Thomas of Becket, one of the martyred saints in the Catholic Church. And now Sir Gawain has a difficult and dangerous journey to take. I told you at the beginning of the semester that the journey theme is probably the single most commonly used theme in all of world literature, where we have a character we kind of like, we identify with that person. And that person, it has to go on a long journey that is potentially dangerous. And we're pulling for that character, that protagonist. We want him or her to come back home safely and be successful. So note number 4 is very, very good. On your paper copy of this, I would ask you to circle that or highlight that note. That one will really help you in responding on your final exam to Sir Gawain. Here's another one that's excellent. And if I had thought to do it, I would have highlighted it in yellow before I did the screen share. Note number 8 is really very good. If I were a student in English 271 and I had a final exam coming up this week where I was trying to finish out this class with a good grade, everybody getting these hints right here? Okay, y'all are catching on, right? I would really use note number 8, because note number 8 is an excellent summary of what Sir Gawain is. I'm giving it to you plain here. I'm telling you, this is what you need to know. Sir Gawain can be described as a series of tests of knightly and Christian virtues with 2 distinct narrative segments or phases: the beheading game and the exchange of winnings, also known as the dangerous romance. That's an excellent note right there. If somebody were to ask you later today, when you go to Walmart, if somebody stops you when you're looking at the bread on the bread aisle and says, against all odds, it would never happen, but if they said, "What is that story Sir Gawain about?" That's going to be your answer right there. You're going to say, "My fellow Walmart shopper, here is what Sir Gawain is about." Sir Gawain is a series of tests of knightly and Christian virtues. And you're going to sound super smart because you are. You've had this class and you're smart. So anyway, that's a really good note. A series of tests to see if Gawain is a good knight, that is a highly decorated soldier of King Arthur, and if he is a good Christian, if his life lives up to good morality and Christianity. All right, so those are our notes. Those are probably some of the best notes I've provided for you of anything this semester. We'll stop the screen share because you have those notes in your packet. All right. Page 837 in your textbook. That's where this story takes place. Page 837. It starts there. You'll notice that the chapter headings are called FIT, F-I-T-T, FIT 1, FIT 2. That's just an old word that means a section or a chapter heading. On 837, as we've already pointed out, the poet, whoever he is, John Massey or the Pearl Poet or even somebody else, says that England was established by descendants of the mighty Roman Empire, and even before them, the mighty Trojans who fought in the Trojan War. All right, let's go over to page 838. That's where the action starts to get better. The poet says that he is going to tell us a story of the great King Arthur. So that makes this story part of Arthurian legend. Now, in the United States, we pronounce it just like that, Arthurian. But in England, sometimes they don't say Arthurian. They pronounce the TH just like a T. So British people might say Arthurian legend. I don't know why. That's just a difference in British English and American English. So it's the same, Arthurian legend or Arturian legend. But we find out that this story will take the shape of a story of King Arthur, a legend of King Arthur. And we learn that King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, the 100 knights, are some of the best soldiers, best trained in all the world. But very quickly in this story, we begin to get a sense that maybe King Arthur's knights have had it too good for too long, that they're a little bit spoiled, a little bit soft, a little bit lacking in discipline. That becomes one of the main themes in this story, is that this giant, mysterious, threatening Green Knight, by the way, the Green Knight is not one of King Arthur's knights. Nobody knows who he is. He's a mystery. He's this sort of mystery guy who shows up in a few pages. He comes and he challenges King Arthur and the knights, and he keeps implying that they are too spoiled and too soft and too lacking in discipline. So that's his role, is to challenge them, toughen them up a little bit. On page 839, we meet King Arthur's beautiful wife, Guinevere. We've actually met her before, haven't we? Y'all remember her last week? She showed up in Chaucer's story, in the Wife of Bath story. Remember that? Same Guinevere, same person, King Arthur's beautiful wife. She is almost always portrayed as lovely to look at and very intelligent. And then Arthur himself is a model of manners and propriety. He's not a violent, bloody king. He's a good king. He's refined. He has good manners. He loves his people. We meet our protagonist, Sir Gawain, as we said, probably a nephew of King Arthur, at the bottom of 839. And at the dinner this particular night, this is one of the Christmas dinners, that is celebration banquets during the Christmas season. Sir Gawain has the distinct honor of being seated next to Guinevere. It's a very high position if you get to sit next to Queen Guinevere. All right, page 840. This is where the antagonist, the violent, mysterious Green Knight, shows up on page 840. Excuse me. And he's pretty rude. He doesn't have good manners about himself. We're in King Arthur's big dining hall. The 100 knights of the Round Table are there. Lots of beautiful ladies. We find out that there is ample food and wine, all kinds of food on the table, wine, beer, all the drinks that these people want. I'm not making any of this up. It's right there in your story. This, by the way, folks, is not a difficult story to read. This is a modern English translation from Middle English, and I find it pretty easy to read and understand. It's not super hard and challenging. So here's King Arthur, his wife, all the knights. They're having a big Christmas party. And all of a sudden, a giant rides his horse right into the dining room, does not leave his horse tied up outside, rides right into the middle of the dining room. Well, that's rude right there. You know, you should never ride your horse into somebody's house. That horse probably doesn't smell too good. But he comes right up still on his horse, and he has no manners about him. He is rude. He is rough in his speech. Before he even speaks, we get a description of him. At the bottom of 840 and top of 841, not only is this knight huge, he's a giant, but the strangest thing about him is not his size, it's the fact that he and his horse are completely green. Everything about him and his horse, they're all green. So that's strange to see a green giant. I know you're thinking right there, Incredible Hulk. That's what you're thinking, of course. But yeah, he's like this big Hulk of a guy, this green giant. He does not have a helmet, a soldier's helmet, which is odd, bottom of 841. He doesn't have a helmet. He doesn't wear chainmail. That's body armor. He does not carry a sword, which is strange for a knight. Here's what he's got. In one hand, he carries a holly bob. That's a sprig of holly. You remember what time of year this is? It's Christmas, isn't it? And the holly sprig is a symbol of Christmas. The holly branch is also a pagan symbol of renewal of life, because pretty soon we're going to have somebody's head chopped off and that person doesn't die. So the holly sprig represents eternal life. Think about holly in the winter, ladies. In the winter, when all the grass is brown, all the leaves are off the trees, a holly bush is still pretty and green, isn't it? It does not turn brown. It symbolizes forever life. Immortal life, even in the cold winter months. Holly is always green with the red berries. So he's got a sprig or a branch of holly in one hand, and in the other, he has a massive battle axe. A huge, I mean, the axe is bigger than a normal size axe would be. Your book calls it a wicked piece of work. Sharp and dangerous. No telling how many men he could kill with that giant axe. All right, so that's his description. Let's go to page 842. At the top of 842, when the Green Knight begins to speak, King Arthur and all the knights of the Round Table, they're just sitting there with their mouths hanging open. They don't know who this guy is. They've never seen him at all. And when the Green Knight starts to speak, he doesn't say, Merry Christmas to you good folks. He doesn't say, how's your mama and them? He doesn't say howdy. Nothing pleasant. He simply says, who's the boss here? I want to talk to the man in charge. That's exactly what he actually says near the top of 842 is, who is the governor of this gaggle? Meaning, who's the boss of this unfit, ragtag looking bunch that you all are? I mean, he starts insulting them right off the bat. He starts insulting these knights. And King Arthur's knights are the best in all the land. These are not slouchy people. These are really good soldiers. So he begins to insult them right off the bat. He's insulting. And what he tells them at the bottom of 842 is that he says, I've come to Camelot because I've heard that you men are the best. And I aim to test you. I aim to put you through a test here to see how brave, how courageous you are as knights. All right, on 843, here's the challenge, the test that he proposes. This is called the beheading game. You'll remember back on the notes when we did the screen share, at the bottom on note number 8, there are two distinct narrative segments in this story. There's the beheading game and there's the exchange of winnings, also called the dangerous romance section. This is the part that starts the beheading game. The Green Knight says, whichever one of you, meaning one of you King Arthur's knights, the knights of the Round Table, whoever is the bravest, I want you to stand up and accept my challenge. I'm going to climb down off my horse. I'm going to hand you this giant axe that I'm carrying. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to lean over, pull all this green hair up. You know, he's got this long sort of Leonard Skinner rock and roll hair going there. He says, I'm going to pull all this hair up and let you swing that axe at my bare neck. I won't fight back. I'm going to let you take a swing at my neck with my own axe. You swing as hard as you want to swing. You do your best. Give me one good shot. And then in a year, I get to swing at your neck. That's the challenge. That's the beheading game. Whoever accepts my challenge, the Green Knight says, I'll get off my horse. You get to take a shot at my neck with my own axe. And then in a year, I get to do the same to you. I'll get to swing the axe at your neck. Well, it's a strange, bizarre game. It clearly sounds dangerous. On page 844, Sir Gawain feels compelled to accept the challenge. Because if he doesn't accept, and if none of the other knights accept, if they all just sit there with their mouths hanging open, scared to death, not knowing what to make of this, well, who has to accept it? It'll have to be King Arthur. Somebody's got to accept this challenge. Well, Gawain says at the bottom of 844 that it does not befit a king, somebody as great as Arthur, to accept this challenge. That this needs to be accepted by one of the knights, that Arthur himself does not need to be involved in this dangerous foolishness. So all of the knights get together, they huddle up for a minute, they talk for just a minute, and they're asking themselves, do we allow Gawain to represent us? Do we let Sir Gawain stand up and accept this challenge? And in a very short amount of time, top of 845, they all come up and say, Gawain, thumbs up. It's all yours, my man. Knock yourself out. You can have this, because none of them want it. None of them want this deadly challenge. So they let Sir Gawain accept the challenge of the Green Knight. Well, the beheading, the head chopping off, occurs on 846, page 846 in your book. The Green Knight does just what he promised. He gets down off his horse. He pulls all of that long green hair up and gives Gawain the axe and says, Gawain, take your best shot. And Sir Gawain grips that axe. I mean, there's even description on how he grips it with his hands. It's like he's had golf lessons or something out there at the country club. He knows how to hold that axe just right. And Sir Gawain raises that axe and he brings it down hard as he can, and he chops the Green Knight's head clean smooth off in one stroke. Boom! He swings so hard that that axe comes down and bites into the hardwood floor of the dining hall. I'm not kidding. That's in your book. The Green Knight's head is instantly cut off and goes rolling along right there beside the people who have been eating supper. Don't you know that'll spoil your appetite, see somebody's head get cut off? I think that probably would ruin your appetite. You wouldn't want to eat anymore if you just saw somebody get their head severed and got all this green blood spurting out on the ground. You know, if I get that on my shoes, will that come out? You know, that's what I'd be worried about, is getting that all over my shoes. So that seems like the end of it, doesn't it? Because it looks like the Green Knight should be dead at this point. Except this happens. The Green Knight, the body doesn't fall. Now the body is headless. The head's way over there on the ground. The body of the Green Knight stands up straight, adjusts itself, and walks over and picks its own head up by the hair like that. Can you imagine that? That is the oh bleep moment where everybody is like, oh bleep, did you see that? The Green Knight didn't die. His body walked over there, picked his own head up. And the funny thing, if this is funny at all, is that he directs the head to talk to different people. Now you're thinking, all right, now this is ridiculous. How does a severed head talk because you don't have your vocal cords? I know, ladies, I know. You got to kind of play along with it here for it to make sense. But the body holds the head up, and the head is talking to people, particularly Gawain. And the severed head says, all right, Gawain, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good shot you gave me there. In a month, in a year and a day, a 12-month and a day, you got to come to my house and find me, and I get to take a swing at your neck because I owe you a swing. And I just tell you what, I'm glad it wasn't Gawain, because don't you know, he's thinking, well, if that guy takes a chop at my neck, I won't be standing up holding my head. I'll be down on the floor dead. I'm just a mere mortal man. So clearly this Green Knight, there's some kind of spiritual power, supernatural power that he has, some magical power, because he's not killed when his head's chopped off. You might think, well, Gawain would decide in a year, this is foolish, I'm not going to go find him. The Green Knight says, come to my house next year. I am the Knight of the Green Chapel. He doesn't even give him any instructions on how to find the Green Chapel. He just says, set out on your horse and start asking for directions. You'll find me. You'll find me next year. Well, Gawain cannot skip out on this. He can't just ditch it, can he? Because now his honor is at stake. He represents King Arthur and all of the government of England. His very honor is at stake. So the next chapter begins on page 847. And that's called Fit 2, or Chapter 2. And that describes the passing of a year. Don't you know that every day that the next year goes by, as it gets closer and closer to Christmas, Gawain gets more and more nervous, because he knows that he has an appointment with a very dangerous giant who is going to take an axe and swing at his head. That's what's waiting on him at the end of this year. That's a fine Merry Christmas right there, isn't it? You know, he's no doubt getting nervous. But Gawain tells us on 849, as the next Christmas draws near, that he has faith both in God and in destiny. There's kind of a mixture of Christian and pagan right there. A faith in God and his destiny, that God will not take him to anything that he can't see him through. Gawain and his horse are very well dressed as they are about to leave. Sometimes when we have this class in a real classroom setting, not sometimes, all the time, I will always ask the students, what is the name of Gawain's horse? Do any of the three of you know yet? Have any of you read this far? If anybody knows, please unmute yourself and tell me. You're going to dazzle me with your knowledge if you know the name of Gawain's horse. Come on, somebody do it. Tell me. Anybody? Well, it's okay. I know you might not have gotten this far yet with your reading, but here's the name of Gawain's horse. It is Gringolet, and it's spelled Gringolet, kind of like Chevrolet is not pronounced Chevrolet, it's Chevrolet. His horse is Gringolet, a French name. So I'm not making that up. Miss Mays is looking at me there like, I think he's making that up. I don't think that's real. No, it is. I promise it's in there. That's a detail that's in the text. His horse has a French name, Gringolet. Remember what we said, Middle English is very French in nature. Gawain and his horse look good when they leave the court of Camelot. They look really good. They are dressed for success. Page 850 and following is the long catalog of Gawain's many adventures as he searches for the Green Chapel. He doesn't even know where the Green Chapel is. He's just riding all through the countryside of England. You might think, well, why didn't he just look it up? Well, remember, Gawain on his smartphone doesn't have Google back then in the Middle Ages. So he's just word of mouth. He's just got to talk to people. Gawain by page 853 is getting very discouraged because it's cold. It's lonely out there. He's by himself. And we see him kind of depressed. He just kind of hangs his head and he starts praying. In the middle of 853, he prays to God and to Christ and says, be near me in my need. That is, Lord, be with me. Give me strength. Help me to find what I need to find. Protect me. And no sooner does he close his prayer, but he looks up and he sees something he had not seen before. He sees a house through the woods, and it's a big house. It's a beautiful house. It's like a castle. And he rides up to this house And he asked on 854 if he might stay inside for a night or two, if he could have hospitality, if he could have a warm place to sleep, and he might get some food because he's tired, he's hungry, he's worn out, and he's not even found the Green Chapel yet where the Green Knight's waiting for him. So he actually receives a very warm welcome at this house. The Lord of the house, or the man who owns it, is on page 855. We meet him, and he is also an impressive man. He's a big guy, he's tall, he's handsome, he's very rugged and manly, and his name is Bersilak, and I'll spell that for you. Bercilak, Bersilak. Some textbooks call him Bertilak with a T, Bertilak. But Bersilak or Bertilak, either one is acceptable for the spelling. Well, Bertilak or Bersilak lives in this big mansion way out in the middle of nowhere in the woods. And as it turns out, this is quite a fine place. This man seems to have money. He does not live alone, because on page 856 and 857, very soon, after they invite Sir Gawain in and say, yes, we can give you a room, we can give you food, we can give you wine, you can rest as many days as you need here. Very soon, on page 857, who does Gawain meet? He meets Bersilak's wife. And Gawain has a thought that he would never say out loud. And here is the thought. When he sees Bersilak's wife, he thinks she is even more beautiful than Queen Guinevere back home. And that's pretty fine right there. She's more beautiful than even Guinevere. And he doesn't say that out loud, but in his heart, he is instantly very attracted to this lovely woman. But he's going to act appropriately around her, because clearly she's married to the man who owns the house. This is her house too. But this begins what we call the dangerous romance theme, or the dangerous romance segment of the story. Because this woman, strangely, I don't think we ever know her name. I think that's odd. She's a main character in this story, and we only know her as Bersilak's wife, or the woman of the house. If any of you run across her name, be sure to let me know, because I've never caught that detail in this. I've never figured it out. She will be all over Gawain. She is the sexual aggressor here. Normally in literature, it's the man who is pursuing the woman. But in this story, that is inverted. That is reversed. It is the woman who is pursuing the man. So for the 3 or 3.5 days that Gawain is in this house, Bersilak's wife will constantly be making moves toward Sir Gawain. She is very aggressive and very forward in her romantic advances. So now Gawain must resist 2 temptations, right? You with me? Fear of his own looming death, because he knows in the back of his mind that in just a few days, he's got to face the Green Knight and he's probably going to be killed. So he has to resist the temptation to be afraid of his own looming death. Secondly, he now has to resist the temptation of this beautiful woman, the advances of this lady. So he has two trials he has to withstand and go through. All right, go to page 860, if you will. On 860, here's the next development in the plot. The Green Knight, not the Green Knight, Bersilak says to Gawain, Gawain, you can stay here in this house as long as you need. What, by the way, Gawain, everybody knows that King Arthur's knights typically stay around the court of Camelot at Christmas, where you have all this big 14 days of celebration. Why are you way out here in the woods? What's your business way out here? And Gawain explains, well, I accepted a challenge last year, and I'm supposed to find This fella calls himself the Green Knight. Big green giant, rides a green horse. He stays at a place called the Green Chapel. I don't even know where it is. And Bersalak says, oh yeah, I know where it is. It's not far from here at all. I know just who you're talking about. In fact, you could stay here three nights and rest up. It's a short ride. You know, it's only a couple miles from here. Now you think about it, a couple of miles, you could walk on foot. But on a horse, that wouldn't take you long at all to go a couple of miles. So Bersalak says, yeah, you got time to rest. You can stay here a few nights. And then I'll show you where to go on the fourth morning, where you can find the Green Knight. But there's one more interesting point. Bersalak, the owner of the house, says, Gawain, you're tired. You've been out riding all these days. Tomorrow morning, why don't you just sleep late? We're going to provide you with your own bedroom. You just rest, you sleep late, you try to regain your strength. My men and I always go out hunting very early in the morning, but you don't have to get up and go hunting with us. You stay here and rest. Whenever you get up, my wife and the attending ladies will serve you breakfast, whatever you need. We'll see to your needs. You just stay here and rest. My men and I are going to go out and go hunting. When we come back in the evening, whatever animal we have killed in the woods that day hunting, I will give that animal to you, Gawain, as a gift. And whatever you have gained or won here in my house during the day, you give that to me as a gift. That, ladies, is called the exchange of winnings. You remember that was on your notes also. The exchange of winnings. So Bersalak, to review, Bersalak says, whatever animal we kill in the woods hunting, Gawain, I'm going to give that to you as a gift. And Gawain, whatever you've won here in my house, any kind of gift you've gotten, you give it back to me. You're thinking, well, that's strange. What in the world would Gawain get there in Bersalak's house? We don't know yet. That's kind of a mystery. But that's called the exchange of winnings. Gawain doesn't really know what it means, but he agrees to it. So Fit 3, or Chapter 3, begins on page 861. And you have a beautiful and vivid description of hunting. Now, Bersalak and his men will go hunting 3 mornings in a row after the 3 nights Gawain spends in the house. The first morning, Bersalak and his men hunt for deer, like we know around here, white-tailed deer. The second morning, they will hunt for wild boar or wild hog, and they will kill one. The third morning is the most dangerous and most sneaky and most difficult animal to hunt, and it is a fox. So the animal symbolism is important. Deer, wild boar, and fox on each consecutive morning. But much more interesting than hunting the animals is what happens on page 862. And basically this same thing happens 3 mornings in a row. Gawain is sleeping pretty well, and early in the morning, when he probably would rather still be sleeping, he hears somebody sneak into his room. And he figures out at the bottom of 862 that it is Bersalak's wife who has snuck into his room where he's sleeping. And she hops up on the bed and she begins to flirt with him in a very suggestive manner. And I mean a very suggestive manner. She is really trying to tempt him and entice him. And she says things like, oh, Gawain, I know that you're very experienced with women. You know all about women. Why don't you teach me a thing or two about love? She's saying that kind of stuff, you know, very suggestive ideas to Gawain. When in fact, she's saying that he's experienced with women and she's an innocent thing. But we know, in fact, it's the opposite, isn't it? Gawain has never been married. Gawain perhaps has never even been with a woman. He's a young man, very inexperienced, whereas this woman, Bersalak's wife, has far more experience with romance. But she plays like she's innocent and Gawain is more experienced. So she flirts with him. She's very suggestive with him. And Gawain simply will not misbehave. He will not do anything wrong here. He plays it very cool. He's courteous to this woman. He compliments her beauty, but he is not going to do anything sinful right here. He keeps his wits about him. All right. By the end of their meeting, she says on this first morning, well, Gawain, I can tell that this is as far as we're going to go today. You have held up well. You've been quite a gentleman. I would think, though, at least you could give me a kiss, she says to him. At least you could give me a kiss. Gawain says, okay, but that's all. I'm going to give you one innocent kiss, nothing more, nothing further. Well, about that time, she leans over and she kisses Gawain. Who's doing the kissing here? It's not Gawain, it's the woman. So she gives him a passionate kiss. But that's all that happens. And they spend the rest of the day just innocently talking and visiting with one another. Nothing's going to go on. All right. So what happens that night? That day, Bersalak and his men have killed a deer. So they get back to the castle that evening, and now we have the exchange of winnings. Bersalak gives the deer to Gawain. I don't know what Gawain wants with a dead deer. Maybe they'll give it to the chef in the kitchen and cook up some deer jerky or some deer barbecue or deer steaks or something. I don't know if in those days they had biscuits and deer tenderloin like we have in the South, but I guess that maybe they did. But at any rate, so the Bersalak gives the deer to Gawain. And what has Gawain won? What has been the gift that he has gotten this day? This works better if we're all in class together in the same room, because you're thinking, uh-oh, what Gawain has gotten is a passionate kiss on this day, right? Yes, you're ahead of me here. You're thinking, oh no, is that where this is going? So Gawain gives Bersalak, another grown man, a kiss on the lips and says, that's the gift I won in this house today. Bersalak kind of jumps back and says, oh, okay, hold on, Gawain, hold on. I believe that that's the gift you got, but I'd like to know who gave you that kind of a kiss. Who in this house? Now, it's not, now remember, Gawain, Bersalak's wife's not the only one who lives here. There's servants back and forth, all kinds. So Bersalak says, Gawain, who gave you this passionate kiss? And Gawain says, no, that was not part of the deal. I don't have to tell you who gave me that kind of a kiss. I'm just telling you that's what I got, so that's why I kissed you, to give you that. So I know it's just a very strange sort of exchange of winnings. So Bersalak says, okay, all right, it's odd, but I guess you've lived up to your end of the deal, Gawain. So then Gawain spends another night. The next morning, Bersalak's wife's back in his room. I tell you what, I don't know but what, I would have locked that door. I guess he couldn't lock her out because this is her house. That would be rude to lock this woman out of his bedroom because this is her house. You know, she lives here. So she's back in his room, flirting with him, climbs up on his bed and all this. Same thing happens. Gawain tries to be very well-mannered, very cool, very courteous, and does not behave in any way inappropriately toward this woman. So she tempts him all that she can, but again, they end the morning with simply one kiss, and that's all. Well, that evening, you have another exchange of winnings. You have the men who have killed a wild pig or a wild boar. They give that to Gawain. He gives Bersalak another kiss. Bersalak says, again, I sure wish you'd tell me who gave you such a kiss here in my house like this. And Gawain says, no, that's not part of the deal. Third morning, same thing. I'm coming over to page 873, 874. The third morning, same deal. Except on this third morning, Bersalak's wife gives Gawain something besides a kiss. She gives him a green belt made out of woven silk, a fine silk belt. In your textbook, it's called a girdle, G-I-R-D-L-E. A girdle means something else in modern day clothing terminology, but a girdle could mean a belt in the Middle Ages, something that goes around your waist. So she gives him a fine woven silk, green silk belt. And she tells Gawain, this belt has magical powers. Whoever is wearing this belt cannot be harmed or killed. Why would that interest Gawain? Where does he have to go tomorrow? He's got to go find the Green Knight. And Gawain fully expects to be killed. Maybe if he's wearing this green belt, and in fact, if it does have some kind of magical ability, some kind of protective ability, it might protect his life. So that night, on the third exchange of winnings, Gawain is a little bit dishonest, and he's ashamed of it. He tells a lie, but he does it because he's afraid of dying the next day. That third exchange of winnings, he gives Bersalak a kiss, but does not say a word about the green belt. Now, if Gawain were completely honest, he should give that green belt to Bersalak, shouldn't he? If he were living up to his end of the deal. But he doesn't. He keeps that a secret and hides the belt because he thinks he might need it the next day. So that's a little bit of dishonesty that we see on Gawain's part. So the next day, let's see, page 876 and 877, Gawain says his prayers. He has a little prayer meeting, gets his affairs in order, his spiritual affairs. He fears for his life, but he knows he has to live up to the code of honor. So Bersalak tells him where to go to find the Green Chapel. It's not far. So Fit 4, or Chapter 4, is on 879. The next day, Gawain gears up and heads for the Green Chapel, page 883. And when he finds it, it's not a chapel like a regular church, like you would think of a church. It's more like a house or a dwelling built in the side of a green hill, almost like a cave. It looks pretty primitive. But he hears a scary sound when he gets there. And what he hears is the sound of stone grinding steel. The sound of a grinding stone, a sharpening stone, rubbing on steel. You know what that is? That's the sound of an axe being sharpened. And he hears the sound of steel on stone, and he thinks, oh Lord, that's for me. That hideous giant is sharpening that axe for my neck. And he thinks that's for me right there. So a chill of fear runs through him. But he presses on, and he walks around until he finally finds the Green Knight. And the Green Knight looks up at him and grins, a scary grin, and says, "Ah, Sir Gawain, well met, my man." In England, that means right on time. You've kept your appointment. And the Green Knight says something like, "Look around here, Gawain. We're all alone way up here in the hills. All alone, and nobody is up here to stop the fun games we're going to play today." And you think, oh, bleep, right there. Gawain thinks, I'm up here in the woods alone with a psychopathic killer. I mean, it is a scary, scary moment. And sure enough, the Green Knight has been sharpening that axe. And Gawain says, all right, let's get this over with. I'm over on 844 and 845 now in your story. Let's get this over with, Gawain says. I'm tired of thinking about this. So Gawain puts his head down on a chopping block and says, all right, Green Knight, take your shot. I said I would do this, and here I am. So the Green Knight says, all right, all right. So he grabs that axe, and he pulls that big old axe up, and the Green Knight swings that axe, and he comes down, and he does not cut Sir Gawain's head off. He actually misses on purpose that first swing. He misses on purpose just to see if Gawain will flinch, just to see if Gawain has fear in his heart. And does he? Yeah, he does. He flinches. He does flinch, which shows that he's afraid. And the Green Knight kind of chuckles at him, kind of laughs at him, says, I thought you were one of King Arthur's brave knights. Look, you flinched. You have fear in your heart. You're not supposed to have fear in your heart. Gawain says, you're right. You're right. You've taught me a lesson. Take another swing. This time, give it your best shot. So the Green Knight raises that axe again, and he again misses on purpose to see if Gawain will flinch. Gawain does a little better this time. He's a little more steady the second time. And the Green Knight says, all right, I see. You've got courage about you. Now, on this time, Gawain says, listen, I'm tired of you toying with me, messing with me. I'm going to give you one more swing, and you better make it a good one. You get one more chance, because after that, I'm going to stand up and defend myself. I'm not going to let you sit here and swing at me all day and just toy with me, make a fool of me. So the Green Knight raises the axe for the third time, and he brings it down, and he just barely nicks Sir Gawain's neck. Does not cut deeply. He just barely cuts the skin so that a couple of drops of blood fall and hit the snow, the white snow on the ground. And Gawain thinks, if I'm looking at drops of blood on the ground, I must still be alive. He must not have cut my head off. So Gawain jumps up, grabs his sword to defend himself, and the Green Knight says, all right, hold on, Gawain, hold on. You don't have to fight. This is over. This deal is done. I'm not going to swing the axe at you. It was all a test. I didn't intend to kill you all along. And then, of course, what you might have already been suspecting is revealed. The Green Knight reveals himself to be none other than Bersalak, who is some kind of shapeshifter, some kind of man who has magical ability to change his appearance. And Bersalak, or the Green Knight, who are actually one and the same, says, Gawain, I know how you behaved around my wife. I know that she tried to tempt you, but you held firm. You were a good man. I even know about that green belt that you have wrapped around you. I know all about that. And at that point, Gawain is ashamed because he's been caught in a lie. He now knows that Bersalak knows that he lied about the belt. He didn't admit to having the green belt. And Gawain is ashamed. He starts asking forgiveness. And Bersalak says, no, listen. Says, you've done well. You know, I have manipulated this situation to try to make you look foolish, to try to trip you up, but you've actually held up very well. You have passed the course with good marks here, Gawain. You need to lighten up on yourself. You're being too hard on yourself, Bersalak says to Gawain. And they end up, you know, kind of shaking hands and parting ways. And at the end of the story, we're coming down now near the end of the story, page 888. Gawain goes back home, rides all the way back to the court of Camelot, to King Arthur's palace. And Gawain is allowed to keep the green belt. Bersalak tells him to keep it as a reminder of all these lessons. And then on 888, once Gawain tells the whole story to King Arthur and the other knights of the Round Table, Arthur says, I'm going to have 100 other green silk belts made just like yours, Gawain, and we're all going to wear that belt as a symbol of our humility, as a symbol that all people make mistakes, as a symbol that we all need to keep our pride in check, and we need to extend mercy and forgiveness to others. And the way that the way that King Arthur is describing wearing it, instead of like a belt horizontally around the waist, it's almost like you've seen some people of royalty wear that baldric. It's a sash that goes from the shoulder across the body to the waist on the other side. I think that's called a baldric. It crosses the body. That seems to be the way that Arthur intends for all of the knights to wear their green belts or their green sashes as a reminder to keep their pride in check, not to be eaten up with hubris, excessive pride, but to remember that all people fail, all people fall short. So that's the didactic lesson, or the didacticism of the story, is that it teaches to keep your pride in check and extend mercy and forgiveness to others. So the whole thing, as I remember what I told you, is a series of tests of knightly and Christian virtues. Will Gawain survive this test, and then this test, and then this test? And finally he does. He goes through the whole series of tests, and he proves to be a good man. All right. Any question or comment, ladies, at this point? Anyone? All right. Do any of you need, I don't, it looked like maybe, I don't know if we had any technical problems. Ring in and tell me if any of you need me to send you the link to watch this recording. Does anybody need the link later on?
I do.
Erica, you need the link? Okay. Either Miss Wallace or Miss Mays, either of you need the video link, or were you able to see it today? Okay.
I was able to see it.
Miss Wallace, you said you were able to see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Miss Mays, give me the thumbs up if you're good today. Go ahead, Miss Mays. Okay, I see you. I see you. Very good. All right. Just as a review, if you haven't done so already, get your annotated bibliography finished and sent to me so I can start grading it. Very soon I will send you exam 2, also known as the final exam, so that you can start work on that. And then Wednesday we will have one more Zoom class together, and that's where we'll talk about Shakespeare's play Hamlet, and you'll be in textbook C, the 3rd textbook then. All right, last chance. Anything? Okay, thank you for showing up today, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.